The ideological battle lines in Georgia are set, with the outgoing Salome Zourabichvili giving way to the new president, Mikheil Kavelashvili. Pro-West versus anti-West. It's a clash of cultures that could engulf the whole country. Join me, Jan Darash, for How We Got Here.
Georgia has a president, but who is he, or she, really? Under constitutional amendments passed in 2017, the country's president is elected not by popular vote, as previously, but by an electoral college. The 300-seat body, dominated by the ruling pro-Russia Georgian Dream Party, elected the 53-year-old former Manchester City striker Mikheil Kavelashvili as president. The Georgian Dream's nominee was the only candidate standing in Saturday's vote. While Georgians, supportive of their country's westward ambitions, have rallied around incumbent President Salome Zourabichvili, Georgia's countryside has predominantly backed Kavelashvili and the Georgian Dream Party.
We are now afraid that if the war stops in Ukraine, it will start here. That is what they say. We must vote for the Georgian Dream. Only then can it be prevented.
Meanwhile, Tbilisi saw IT specialists, public sector workers, creative industry professionals, actors, and lawyers protest the election of Kavelashvili on Saturday. Incumbent President Salome Zourabichvili condemned Kavelashvili's election, calling it a travesty and insisting she held the remainders of Georgia's legitimate presidency. On this note, let's make a quick review of Georgia's post-USSR presidents. Dissident, academic, and writer Zviad Gamsakhurdia became the country's first president in May 1991. He built on his career of anti-communist activism and prominence in promoting Georgian nationalism. His successor, Eduard Shevardnadze, was by no means a newcomer to Georgian politics. He, as the communist he was, ruled Georgia as first secretary of the Georgian Communist Party from 1972 to 1985. In the wake of the Soviet Union's collapse in 1991, Shevardnadze returned to Georgian politics, after being summoned to lead the country by the military council after it deposed of Gamsakhurdia. Formally elected as president in 1995, he oversaw the signing of a peace treaty that ended military hostilities in South Ossetia. He also brought Georgia into the Commonwealth of Independent States, deepening its ties with the European Union and the United States. During his tenure, Georgia declared its intention to join NATO. While Shevardnadze oversaw large-scale privatization and other political and economic changes, his rule was marred by rampant corruption and accusations of nepotism, which triggered a wave of social protests that came to be called the Rose Revolution. The leader of the peaceful revolution, Mikheil Saakashvili, led Georgia as its president from 2004 to 2013. He prioritized modernizing Georgia's economy, reducing corruption, and strengthening state institutions, while managing to transform the police force, foster rapid economic growth, and tick off the successes. His tenure was also characterized by authoritarian tendencies, crackdowns on dissident, and political polarization. Internationally, Saakashvili sought closer ties with the West, particularly NATO and the EU. His reputation was overshadowed by the 2008 war with Russia over South Ossetia, which led to Georgia losing control of the two breakaway regions. Saakashvili was succeeded by Georgian Dream, an academic groomed by the pro-Russia mogul and leader of the Georgian Dream coalition, Bidzina Ivanishvili. Having won the October 2013 presidential election with 62% of votes, Margvelashvili led Georgia from November 2013 to December 2018. His tenure saw presidential power significantly weakened under a new constitution in favor of prime minister and the parliament. The brunt of this decision has been suffered by Georgia's outgoing president, Salome Zourabichvili, who could do very little to prevent the ruling Georgian Dream Party from deliberately straying from the country's EU path. With Zourabichvili's term set to end on December 29, Georgia's path to join the Western family is looking as uncertain as ever.
Joining us today is Anna Zvania, a researcher at the Ilya State University in Georgia, Tbilisi. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you for having me today.
Let's get straight into we've seen all the pictures from the protests, not just these protests, but the previous ones, of course. What is the picture of the Georgian society in general? Is it as polarised as I suppose it should be or would be? Town and country, young and old, nostalgia for the old system, a yearning to be European, which we'll explore later on. Is this polarisation runs through Georgian society at every age group, professional group, regional group? How does that look?
I would say that polarization does exist, but it's not 50-50, or it's not the huge antagonism between the core values or the vision of the country. 85% across all the groups of the population in Georgia support being part of Europe. It's a strong position which is maintained for more than 20 years, never changed. There were fluctuations a little bit with NATO membership, and this is sometimes played badly by some of the political parties. But European aspiration is steadily, it's part of identity. It has historical roots. So I wouldn't say there is any disagreement of what should be. 85% is the according all the polls conducted by all the parties, independent institutions. So as a researcher, I can tell you that it's a very strong thing. So we don't have disagreement where Georgia should be. Now, there are certain factors which affect the decision of the people, and the Georgian ruling party up to now was perceived by its supporters as ruling towards European Union. It has adopted a lot of legislation. There was talks with Europe about, there was a membership plan, and there were a lot of steps done, even on the image side, just before the elections, which we had in end of October, parliamentary elections. Georgian Dream has added symbols of European Union more consistently to its advertisement. So it was filling its electorate, and it was trying to address this issue. So there is no disagreement on that. So I wouldn't say there is an antagonism. Now, of course, people who are over 50, they are more cautious. They're afraid, and they less believe in success. It doesn't mean that they don't have aspiration. So it's also very tricky, according to what type of the question the sociologists ask them. They receive sometimes some of the concerns which still don't undermine their willing to be part of the Europe. That is a very important thing. Now, younger you go, and younger, I mean that people who are younger than 45, let's say, the majority of them see themselves in Europe. Yeah. They understand more technically and more clearly what does it mean. And I think the visa-free regime was a very important step for Georgia, because people started really to spend the most possible vacations, personal time in Europe, coming sometimes for a few days, exploring totally. You can find Georgians literally in every hidden village of Europe. They feel comfortable there. They don't speak most of the languages, of course, but they don't have a huge language barrier, which is important because the knowledge of English is also quite tremendous in that age group among the young people. So they think that they are part of the Western world. They think that they are part of the Europe. So there is no contradiction. The ruling party, Georgian Dream, is important force. It held all the institutions. It captured a little bit of state, and it's very powerful in terms of the resources. So people who work for the government and affiliated with them, families, have been played and manipulated by the ruling party. It's very difficult to have a distance and to analyze the situation when it's very emotionally matters for everyone right now. But I can tell you that for the last few days, we have manifestations in a different set. I have not seen this before. During the day, you have approximately 10 events, and one of the events was by the civil servants. So not only the diplomatic corps representatives, and not only workers and employees of some of the ministries make their voice heard and made a clear declaration that don't support the backslide of democracy. They don't support saying no to Europe or even postponing to that. But they also have a demonstration in the streets. So there are people who were probably voting from the Georgian Dream. They are in the streets right now, and this is very important.
Is this the idea of, you said not even saying no to Europe is off the agenda? Is this a luxury that here in Western Europe we have? For example, Britain voted Brexit and half of the country wanted to stay in, half wanted out, but it was still near 22 miles away from Europe. Does geography play this part in the debate? Russia, of course, historically, even today, is closer than Europe ever will be.
Thank you.
At least physically.
Thank you for comparing it to Britain. There is nothing similar. And I think you raised the most important thing, regional position and also the size of the country. We are less than 4 million people living in the neighborhood where we have Iran, but more importantly we have Russia, which still thinks that we are under their sphere of influence, yes, and we should obey. The biggest unaccepted thing from the side of Georgia, which Russia was not tolerating, was aspiration to freedom and democracy, because they were probably afraid that it will be contagious and democratic values will also affect Russia in a way that will destabilize Putin's regime. So it was fighting not only access to Europe, but it also fighting democracy in Georgia. And our economy is not that strong. We don't have the huge resources which can, be interesting. We are, I think, very open and very interesting from a geopolitical point of view, but we are too far from Europe. It's two big powers are playing, negatively in our area, that our supporters has to face it. And Russia is invading or fighting or having the hybrid or proper war, not only in Georgia, but in Ukraine, and trying to manipulate with other, like for Moldova, for example. So,
what's the main lesson that this conflict with Russia erupted into armed conflict? What has that taught Georgia?
You mean the war in 2008?
Yes. And plus a later hybrid.
Yeah, I can tell you that it was not one-time event. It was the escalation, but the border is still moving. We have Russian troops, which in approximately 40 kilometers from Tbilisi. When you go to Western, each time you pass the closest point and you see Russians standing. Their visible military presence is something which people are afraid. Yes, we coped perfectly, I think, to the extent possible with the refugees, with the people who have been raped, who have been, incredible human drama was there. But somehow it was a very short event in the world's history. We're lucky that they were not that bloody as it might be. And somehow it was said that, probably let's say some of the politicians were accusing, and Georgian Dream was playing, that the previous government was not elegant enough or is not professional enough on the diplomacy to avoid that. The decision to invade Georgia was not with Georgian nation. That's so clear. And it was also testing. It was testing Western allies. It was not only against Georgia, it was against Western allies. So their position was primary importance for Georgia, even now. So one of the important things is that we have to be better than any other country in terms of the democracy and development. We have to be pattern or be close to the ideal state that we are not accused. So we had a lot of progress, honestly saying, in that regard. Not everything was perfect, of course, far from that, but we implemented important reforms, and we were very proud of that. But it was incredibly painful because Georgian people were told that they have to be brave, that somehow there was a miscalculating of fear of the breaking out of the war again. Even when you live there, you don't feel the war. In Georgia, it's a pretty joyful place. And a lot of Western journalists of analytics who were visiting Georgia, they don't feel that. They don't feel the people that they are traumatized, that they live with this fear. And I think it's a very important factor which is not seen from outside. because people have a lot of losses, not only the family members or the friends. I can tell you, I was working at that time with the Ministry of Education, and we just refurbished all the sports gyms and the fields for the schools, also in the like South Ossetia region. And it's for the first time ever since there was a proper infrastructure for kids to go for sport. And there was a story of one of the head of the school who his son has died in that war, but for a few days they were not able to tell him that the infrastructure is destroyed and the school doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. And the Russian soldiers even wrapped up this, this field. It was artificial grass, and took it back to Russia.
Yes, if it's not nailed down.
Yeah, but for them it was, they were feeling that something. So it was so difficult, and so many people have been affected by this drama. It's not just 5 or few days war. It's something more important,
It's a rather lukewarm reception that Georgia and Georgia's aspirations has to join the European Union. Mm-hmm. It must make Georgian politicians from all parties feel far more beleaguered and more alone.
To a certain extent, yes, but we don't have the luxury of having some emotions or personal dissatisfactions. We are fighting for our country and for the interest and for the future, because that's an era opportunity. If we lose right now, we don't know when the window will be open for us again and when we will be able to really have a steady development for the country. Right now, Russia is not only imposing the threat, it's keeping us back. It prevents economic developments, it supports corruption, it really undermines all the democratic development. So as a small society, we are going back. So it's not that, that maybe we have an option. So yes, we may sometimes be a little bit frustrated with some of the partners, but it's a natural process, because for Europe, we also have to show how we can contribute. We should be a contributor to the global security, to the global prosperity, and we have to be, Europe should be happy helping us to become a member, yes, but also should receive something from that. And it's absolutely natural process, and it's, again, we are far away to be well understandable.
A final question to you. The splits in Georgian society, which you've outlined at the beginning of our discussion, how is it possible to resolve those splits? If it's one of these existential differences that societies have.
I think that democracy is the only way of making society agreeable and happy about its choice. We had a peaceful transition in power in 2012, and it was a very important milestone for Georgia. Right now, there are several visions, and all the political parties and also our Western partners are supporting, and our President Salome Zourabichvili is still in the office for a few next days. They have a vision how to do it. It's held new elections, and elections which will be free and fair, and really when people will be able to manifest their will, not in the streets, but in the proper due process, and then to form the government which will be multi-party, representing people, will cancel certain type of the law, like the Russian law on the foreign agents, and allow the people and its diversity of Georgian people to represent it in the parliament and everywhere. This is a very important. We are a diverse nation. We have national minority.
We'll certainly keep watching Brief on Georgia and hope to have you back to discuss developments. Anna Zvanya, thank you very much for coming onto the programme.
Thank you very much for having this opportunity.
Great.
Thank you.
That's it for the time being. Do join us next time for How We Got Here.